But I got like super addicted again. It got under my skin, and all I wanted to do was row. And so it very quickly, it went from like, oh, competitive sweep team 3 days a week, to then, oh, well, I'll go out of my single the other 2 weekdays a week. And then it was like, oh, well, maybe I'll go out of my single 3 days a week. And 10K rows became 15K rows, became 18K rows. And soon I realized that I was like sitting in the office just daydreaming about getting back in the boat.
Welcome to The Other 3 Years, a show for anyone who has an Olympic-sized dream they want to turn into a reality. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of The Other 3 Years podcast. My name is Kristi Wagner. This week on the podcast, I have 5-time U.S. rowing national team athlete and my friend and fellow doubles rower, Molly Reckford. I'm super excited to have Molly on the podcast. Molly is a 2-time Olympian and will be racing this summer for the second time in the lightweight women's double. She rows with Michelle, whom I already had on the podcast, so go listen to that episode if you want more lightweight women's double inspiration. Molly has a super interesting and inspiring story of how she got back into rowing following her high school and college rowing careers. And as a sneak peek, she basically started as a masters rower in San Francisco and only 18 months later was racing at the 2019 World Championships. And since then, Molly's been super successful, super accomplished, and a fierce competitor whom I get to practice with all the time. I think Molly's story really shows that anyone can accomplish way more than they might first think if they work hard and make the most of their opportunities presented. She had so many great stories to share, and I just think everyone will really enjoy hearing from her. I know that I did. Before we get into my conversation with Molly, here is an update on what's currently going on in my training. We are back in Princeton for our last Princeton camp before we head over to Europe. We are in a high volume training and have been spending some time in singles and doubles this week. We also got some altitude hypoxic tents that we are sleeping in to mimic high altitude training. You know, every time we're in a new cycle, like it takes a few days to kind of get back into everything, but those few days are kind of happening and we're a little bit more into the week now, so definitely feeling better about everything, and our rows are already getting better, so that's good. But yeah, now it is hot. It feels like summer has just happened, and if Princeton is known for anything, it certainly can be known for heat in the summer. So I think it's just going to be a lot of volume and some really sweaty workouts for the next few weeks before we head to Europe. But it's pretty exciting. I think everyone's pretty focused in and, just really wants to make the most out of, this last training block here in Princeton and squeeze out all of the speed that we possibly can. This past weekend was the IRA, which is the national championship for men's heavyweight and lightweight and women's lightweight collegiate rowing. So that was in Princeton, so super convenient for all of us. My boyfriend Ian coaches the Harvard lightweights, and they won the lightweight varsity 8 and the lightweight 2v8, which is very exciting. And yeah, it was super fun to cheer for them. A little bit hard to cheer for Harvard, but I cheer for Ian. So yeah, but I was really happy for them. It's very fun when people's hard work pays off. I feel like that is just a nice thing in life when you get to see kind of the behind the scenes of it a little bit and then see that pay off for people is just a really cool thing. And so now we're just training hard, eating hard, and sleeping hard, but really not much is going on beyond that for the next few weeks. So now it is time for my conversation with Molly. I hope you all enjoy it. All right, here we go. Molly, I'm super excited.
I'm super excited too. I am. This is a big deal for me.
It's a big deal for me. We're podcasting. We're podcasting live from altitude tents, which is
live from altitude tents.
Hilarious, but very fun. I actually realized in thinking about this and preparing for today that I do not even know how you started rowing. So
Just like down to the early days.
the early days, the people want to know, being me, the people.
The people. I always waffle about where did I start rowing. And that's because when I was in middle school, my older sister rowed for our high school before I got into high school. She loved rowing, and I just decided that I was going to love rowing because my sister loved rowing. And I had never rowed before, and so I went to like this day camp at Rutgers University here in New Jersey, summer before eighth grade. And it was this very silly learn to row camp. And I fell head over heels, absolutely super duper in love with it. Not a lot of people know this about me, but I have this birthmark on my thigh, and it's not very big. But I had crazy, crazy self esteem issues about my birthmark, and I hated it. And rowing was the first time I felt comfortable wearing shorts where people could see my birthmark. And it was the first time that I felt like comfortable in my own skin. And so that was very cool and very special, and I fell absolutely in love with it. And so I like technically learned to row at a learn to row camp in middle school, but a lot of the time I say I learned in high school because that's just a little easier. We had a freshman crew, and I did freshman crew my freshman year.
It's funny, I actually also learned how to row at a learn to row in middle school. Although we like only rowed in barges, so I don't know if that really counts, but that is technically how when I learned to row. So yeah, then in high school, did you just like love it the whole time? Like want to keep doing it in college?
Oh yeah, I was so gung ho. I loved it. High school was also interesting because that was the first time that somebody told me I was too small. They weighed us in at the beginning of the season, which I think was a sort of, in retrospect, a little weird, but at the time felt very normal. And I was like 125 pounds at 5'9", and they were like, "You should probably weigh more." And I remember being like, "No, no, 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 no! Like I can be good at this weight," and like having a certain amount of anxiety about being as light as I was, and like wanting to get strong, wanting to gain weight, wanting to be good, but not really having the erg scores. And so I was in the fourth, the junior varsity eight, the fourth eight, my sophomore year, and then I made it into the 1 and 2V my junior and senior year. I had a catastrophic knee injury. I dislocated my kneecap my senior year, the day before tryouts.
Ouch.
Yeah, that was really bad. Like a full dislocation. My kneecap was on the side of my leg. It was very traumatizing, and I couldn't walk for about 2 weeks. And so I missed tryouts. That really sort of derailed me from my senior spring, but I still made it into the second varsity, and I didn't end up missing a single race. So that was a great healing
Wow.
process. I did all my PT very diligently.
And you guys only rowed like one season.
So we had one competitive season. We would compete in the springs, and then we had like a club non-competitive season in the fall. I ran track for a year or two, and then I actually wrote my own training programs my junior and senior year, and I would weightlift and erg and run on my own so that I wouldn't lose too much weight. Because my coach said, "You can't run track in the winter because you come back to me too light."
Oh my god.
Yeah, and now that I know what I know, I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, seriously. No, I was gonna ask if you enjoyed like doing other sport, like getting to do other things in high school as well as rowing.
Absolutely, I really did. I was a pole vaulter and a hurdler on the winter track team, and I loved that. I loved pole vaulting. I loved the hurdles. I tried out for the swim team and didn't make it. So even though I love swimming, I'm not particularly good at it. But I really did like the ability to do other sports and to be sort of well-rounded.
Yeah. I think that's like very key for younger athletes not to just be doing one thing all of the time. Taking it into college, like did you always know that you wanted to keep rowing in college? Like what was that process like?
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to keep rowing in college. I loved rowing. I think that it was part of my personality, how much I loved rowing and how much I loved the team environment and working hard. And so I knew I wanted to row in college, and I tried to get recruited. I looked at both lightweight and open weight schools. because I was about 130 pounds at the time, eating anything I could get my hands on. And there was some question, though, of are you going to get to college and finally grow? You've grown up so much, are you finally going to build out? And so I really wanted to be able to enjoy my college experience. I didn't want to diet. I am highly, highly food motivated, and so I didn't want to be living in a world where I was denying myself. And so I looked at both lightweight schools and openweight schools. And I looked at D1 and D3. And this was partially because my parents had always very much instilled in me that college comes first, school comes first. If rowing hurts your grades, you're done rowing. No questions. And so I wanted to find a school that I liked, a team that I liked, but somewhere where I thought I'd be able to thrive. And so I looked at Georgetown, I looked at Lehigh, I looked at Bucknell, I looked at Williams, Dartmouth, Duke, Princeton, and I spoke to coaches at a lot of these schools and tried to get recruited at a couple of them. A lot of the lightweight coaches basically said, we're interested, but you don't seem too gung-ho about being a lightweight, because I was open with them and I was honest, and I said, I'm looking for a school where if I grow, I can go join the open weight team. And they were like, we're not going to recruit you to join the open weight team if we're a lightweight coach. And then all the open weight coaches were like, you're really shrimpy, your ERG score's not really good enough. And so it didn't really end up working out for me. The Duke coach told me that he could teach big girls how to row. He couldn't teach me how to be big. So college recruiting ended up just not working out for me. So I applied normal decision to all of my colleges, and in the end I got into Dartmouth, and the coach had told me that I wasn't really big enough to be on her team, and basically she said, like, don't even fill out the recruiting questionnaire, you're not worth our time. And I got into Dartmouth on my own and sort of showed up on day one and said, hey, you're stuck with me.
That is just like so wild to me that people say that.
To be fair to all these coaches, I was 130 pounds. I was going 750 on my 2K. I was in the second varsity at a very good for a boarding school, but not a nationally particularly strong program. Like, I didn't really have the receipts for my confidence. And so, like, I get it. If an athlete like me came to me and said, oh, Molly, like, I go 752 on my 2K, do you think I can get recruited to college? I'd be like, good luck. I wish you the best, but good luck. So I get it.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a difference between saying, like, your 2K isn't quite where it needs to be and saying, like, we would never recruit a person of this size or whatever. I feel like that's a different conversation.
Yeah, and I think that probably a lot of those things in a lot of people's minds tend to get tied up together. Like, people think that if you're small, you're never going to be able to get a good 2K. Now I feel like in the world, right, and this was 2010 that I was trying to get recruited. Now in the world, we're so much more aware about how we talk about women's bodies, how we talk about athletes' bodies, how we talk to teenagers about their bodies. And I feel like at the time, I didn't have this sense of, like, you can't talk about me that way. Whereas right now, I absolutely would be like, it's not your place to comment on how big or not big I am.
100%. But then you did row for 4 years at Dartmouth. So
Yeah, all 4 years.
And in the top boats, right? What was that experience like? And
rowing at Dartmouth is very special. I was very satisfied that I stroked our freshman heat my freshman fall, even though I wasn't recruited. That really felt like a win. My senior year was a little weird, but yeah, I was in the 1 and 2V for most of my rowing career at Dartmouth, and rowing there is so special because, like, the boathouse is on campus, so you just walk there. My dorm was at the top of the hill, the boathouse was at the bottom of the hill, and the Connecticut is such a beautiful waterway, and in the fall you get the foliage and there are all these beautiful trees, and it's just like a really, really special experience. at Dartmouth, your sophomore summer, you actually stay on campus and go to school. And so all summer after my sophomore year, we got to do small boats work and we got to scull and it's the water is cool but the air is hot, and so you go out for a row and then you jump in the river to cool off, and it's just like this magical summer camp vibe. So it was really special, and the team there was great, and it's a small team. We normally could put out 2 8s and 2 4s, and maybe we'd get a third 8 in there somewhere. But it was always, when I was there, it was a very small team, very tight knit, and just like a good culture. Sometimes the river wouldn't thaw until April, but we had our erg caves and we had our erg workouts, and when the ice finally did break, it was always really exciting. So not the easiest place to row, but certainly a good place to row.
And there's some really high percentage of students at Dartmouth that play sports, right?
Yes. I think it might be 60% of the student body plays sports, because we are a 4,000 student school, but we have a full sports roster, and so it's just like we are small enough, but our sports teams are big enough that we had a really high student athlete population, which was also really cool. And there was this great program called Dartmouth Peak Performance, and it was started by the president of the school at the time, and it was basically, the idea behind it was movement and sports increase blood flow, and they should increase your academic capacity, and so our student athletes should also be our top students. And I really loved that vibe. I loved this idea that like the athletes are held to the exact same, if not higher, academic standards as everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so cool. Like in my college experience, like a lot of professors did not think athletes like deserved to be at the school. I guess it didn't even really matter how you wound up there. Like they just didn't really think sports were like helping you in your college career. And so I just think it must have been really cool to be a student athlete at a school where like academics were so prioritized, but athletics were also really prioritized, and it was seen as a place where you could do both and do both like really well. I think that just must have been really cool.
That was absolutely wonderful, and I think that sort of that mentality around sports and athleticism and academics, it not only did it fit with the way I wanted to live and operate, but it also helped sort of set the standard for how I want to live after school. I want to keep my body healthy, I want to keep my mind healthy, I want both, and you don't have to pick. And I do sort of hate this idea that like if you're a jock, you're a dumb jock, because that's just so unfair, and it doesn't allow for any of the normal variance in humans.
So speaking of after school, you graduate and move to California, if I'm correct. And did you think you were going to keep rowing? Like, how did rowing play a role, and what was that all like?
I was done. My senior year, I finished the season in the B4, so the second four. So your 1B, your 2B, your A4, and then your B4. I was sort of at the end of my rope with coaches not believing in me, and I was just done. I had these strong academic aspirations. I, come from a family where like school and brains and career always comes first, and I knew that there are only so many spots on the Olympian team, on the national team, and holy cow, if I'm athlete number 20 at Dartmouth College, there's no world in which like rowing will have any future for me. So I got a job in sales and trading at Citibank. 3 days after graduation, I moved to New York City. I started work on the trading desk. These are 12-hour days. You're on the desk at 6:15 a.m. and you stay on the desk until 6:15 p.m. And so there was not a lot of room for sports or any kind of movement in my life at that time. But I did keep working out because I needed to move as much as I could. So I got a gym membership like a normal human. I would lift a couple days a week, and I would do cardio a couple days a week. So I stayed in touch with movement. But there was, I mean, like rowing, I never thought I would even look at a boat again. So that's summer 2015. And then my job gave me the opportunity to move to San Francisco. And right before I moved, it was the Rio Olympic Games. And I remember I was sitting in a falafel shop with my mom, getting lunch, sort of taking a break from the preparation to move to California, and Jevy Stone's silver medal singles race comes on the TV in this like random falafel shop in New Jersey. We watched the race and she wins silver, and I think that was the first time I was like, oh, I kind of miss that a little bit. And then the O'Donovan brothers had their super famous post-race lightweight interview, and that was, so hilarious, and they did so well, and there was a Dartmouth guy in that race. I think they got 4th or 5th, and so the seed got planted a little bit that summer of 2016. But I moved to San Francisco. I was still working a ton. San Francisco sales and trading, you start work at 4 a.m. because you start East Coast hours when the market's open. So I arrived at the office at 3:30 in the morning every day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right? It was wild. It was a super wild time in my life. But I kept working out. I really enjoyed weightlifting, so I started doing a lot of really heavy lifting, and that's when I got my front squat up to 165 pounds, which, hey, when you only weigh 140 pounds, feels really impressive. I sort of just focused on my career, and I kept working, and I didn't start rowing again until January of 2018. That was when my boss, who went to Yale and was a squash player at Yale, mentioned that the Stanford Boathouse was really close to our office and said, oh, maybe you want to join a rec league for rowing. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a gym in this new neighborhood that's rowing sounds fun. I'd love to get outside. It's California. It's always warm. I'm going to have such a great time. And I go to this boathouse and I'm getting the tour, and these two absolutely lovely women walk up to me and they're like, you look really athletic. Do you want to join our competitive masters sweep team? And I was like, whoa, kind of no, but sure. Kind of no, but yeah. They met at 4:15 in the morning and I was like, Jesus Christ, people, why? I joined this team and I started just falling back in love with it. And I was getting my ass kicked. Here I was 25, 26. I thought I was so cool. And these moms were just whooping up on me in the singles. But I got super addicted again. It got under my skin and all I wanted to do was row. And so it very quickly, it went from competitive sweep team 3 days a week to then, oh, well, I'll go out of my single the other 2 weekdays a week. And then it was maybe I'll go out of my single 3 days a week. And 10K rows became 15K rows, became 18K rows. And soon I realized that I was sitting in the office just daydreaming about getting back in the boat. I did a 2K to see how fit I was. Totally by choice. Woke up one day, I'd had Thai food and beer the night before. And I just sat down on the erg and was like, I'm going to rip a 2K and see what I can do. And I beat my college PR.
Wow.
And this was after about 2 months of training. And part of me was like, what was I doing wrong in college? And part of me was like, oh my God, it doesn't matter. Whatever I'm doing now is right. And so I leaned into it and I began to think oh, maybe. And I went to Masters Nationals that summer and I won 6 gold medals. Because you're allowed to enter 6 events.
Amazing.
So that was super, super fun. I had a great time. And I sort of realized that I wanted to compete. And I wanted to find more competition. And so there's not really a club scene in California the same way there is in Boston or Philly or DC. And so I was like, well, there's no club scene, so I guess I'll just try to be on the national team. And I had no idea how crazy that was. If I had known how bonkers that was, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I was like, yeah, I don't know, there's nowhere else to go.
That's awesome. So like 1 year after starting rowing again, you raced in that lightweight quad, basically.
Yeah. There was this great moment. August 2019, I was at the World Championships in the lightweight women's quad, and I got my like Instagram 1 year ago. What were you doing? And 1 year ago, I had been at Masters Nationals, and that was like, holy cow! In 18 months, I went from I've forgotten how to erg to like racing for Team USA at the qualification worlds in the year before lightweight rowing is going to get taken out. So it was a very crazy 18 months.
And at that time, like everything, especially for like lightweight women's rowing, was kind of outside of any sort of centralized system. So how did you kind of find your way like into that group, into that camp, so to speak?
I owe everything to Casey Geldan. Anybody can sign up. It turns out anybody can sign up for Speed Order. And so I registered for the Speed Order, and I it's so funny now. I was like the second person to register. I was so gung ho about registering for Speed Order. Like the second they opened it up, I was like, yes, I'm going. As opposed to now, I'll get my entry in like 10 minutes before it's due. So I registered for the spring Speed Order, and I had never been to Florida before.
Wow.
I had never raced an official 2K. I hadn't raced a 2K since college. So it's 2019. I graduated I haven't raced a 2K in 4 years. I've just been derping around doing 1Ks and drinking beer and having fun. I go to the Speed Order, and I don't have a coach. I don't know my oar measurements. This is the part that, like, when I think about it now, is so cringe. I flew with my own oars from California, but I hadn't measured my length or my inboard. Like, I didn't know what my rig was. Which now is horrifying, like, to think that I didn't know the length of my own oars. And I rented a boat from Hudson, and it was an open weight boat. It wasn't a lightweight boat. And I didn't know what my spread was supposed to be. I just trusted it would be right. Like, all of these completely insane things in retrospect that I didn't know. And I didn't have a coach, so I didn't have somebody being like, you should know what your spread is. And I was like, what's pitch? What's inboard? I don't know. So yeah, I show up in Florida. I miss the meeting for the regatta because they had like the athlete information meeting. I thought it was at 8:30. It was at 8, so I just missed the whole thing. Somebody had said, oh, when you return off the race course, you go under the bridge. I went under the bridge that goes to the fountain, not under the bridge that goes to the canal. So I went to the sailboat pond trying to get off. Like, I don't think anybody understands how much I had no idea what I was doing. And then the craziest thing was I got 7th place.
Wow.
And so I did this Speed Order, and in my head I had said, there's a lightweight single, there's a lightweight double, there's a lightweight quad, that's 7 seats. I'm going to do my best, and if I get top 7, I'm going to keep trying this, and if I don't get top 7, I'm going to go back to my job and my real life and my career. And I end up winning the B final, getting 7th place. And Michelle knows this, but I had like a little rowing crush on Michelle. And so I reached out to Peter. I think I had heard or I knew that she didn't really have a partner. And so I reached out to Peter Mansfeld at Vesper, where she was rowing at the time. And I was like, hey, I'm an up-and-coming lightweight rower. This is my 2K. This is my 6K. I'm here at Speed Order. I'm looking for a partner. Can I, come row for you at Vesper? It was, very much like, hey, would you please introduce me to Michelle? And he goes, I don't really have that many lightweights right now. Talk to Casey Galvanic. And the year before, when I bought my personal boat off of a high schooler, Casey actually brought my boat to California on his trailer for Youth Nationals. So I had met Casey. So I, reintroduced myself to Casey, and I said, hey, once again, these are my ERG scores. I'm a master's rower, but I rowed at Dartmouth. Stuff's a little weird. Here I am. I got 7th place. I'm looking for a doubles partner. And he was running a selection for lightweights that year because it was the qualification for the last Olympics for lightweights. And he, like, literally out of the goodness of his heart was like, any lightweight who wants to come to Sarasota, I will take times, I will write a training program, and I will make recommendations, and I will coach you. I went to that selection camp, and that is where I met Rosa, my first ever doubles partner. You know, she was sort of Casey's top athlete at the time, and we vibed immediately. He put us in a double, and it just flew. We raced the double at that trials and got second place, you know, after training together for like 2 or 3 weeks. That was an absolutely amazing result and really, really exciting. And then from there, it just kept escalating. So then I went into quad selection and I made it into quad, and that's really when I realized that, like, this was working.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, if Casey hadn't believed in me and trusted in me and, like, trusted me to row with his star athlete, I don't think I would have ended up hanging on for as long as I did and being able to break through to where I did.
But you also earned those opportunities, you know?
He gave me access to the tool shed, you know, and I had to use the tools, but, like, it very easily could have been locked. And I think any other year, the barrier to entry would have been too high.
So then you guys were, like, all ready to race at trials in 2020. It gets canceled. Do you think that the COVID year helped you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be careful what you wish for, is what I would say. I finally got to row with Michelle in January of 2020, and we had like 2 months before trials. And I remember being like, if only I had started a year earlier, if only we had a year to train this double, like, I think we can do it, but I wish I had more time. And then, of course, COVID came in and was like, hey, you have more time now. But yeah, so the year was huge for me. Another year of base training. It gave me the opportunity to go train in Boston over the summer, meet my hero, Jemmy Stone, start working with Jesse Folia, get into the Boston training group. That was a really, really important summer for me in my development. And having that year to gain strength, gain fitness, gain confidence in the single was invaluable. I absolutely, like, the COVID did a lot of terrible things in the world, but it also really gave me a chance.
Because you guys had to go through the qualifier in 2021. So I feel like having an extra year of, like, development as, like, just for you, but also as, like, a boat rowing together was probably, like, really helpful.
Absolutely. And even though we didn't spend that whole year training the double, you know, we sort of got back in the double. We trained the double until about June, and then I managed to break 2 ribs, and we sort of were like, all right, we're gonna take a pause. Bilateral rib fractures, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. So we took about 6 months to train the singles and train on bikes and run and cross train and stuff. But yeah, like, having that year of extra time to figure out who we were as a boat was super important, especially going into a race as wildly stressful as the final qualifier.
How was kind of your experience from, like, trials through the qualifier and then, like, preparing for Tokyo? I feel like you guys were very, like, independent, but it seemed like you guys had, like, a plan, you know, and you're like, these are the things we need to do to, like, get where we want to go.
I'm so glad it looked like we had a plan. What it really felt like was a string of 3-week sprints. We had to win the trials in February, and then we had to qualify the boat, and then we would have the Olympics. And so the way we planned it out, which I think was quite smart, was after we won the trials, we planned to go to open weight doubles trials to sort of get a practice go at intense racing. That's where we raced you.
First of many times.
Yeah, little did we know. So we trained some in Florida. We got really good heat training. You know, Casey was our coach. We came to Florida. We called it World Cup Princeton. We raced at the open weight trials and got second place and got invited to quad camp for it, which was one of my favorite things, getting invited to open weight quad camp. And then from New Jersey, we went to Switzerland. We raced the final qualifier. I loved having those extra races under our belts. Like it really helped me feel prepared. It really helped me feel at home on a race course. And winning the final qualifier is probably the best feeling in the world. The ecstasy, the relief, the joy, the oh my god, I can't believe we just pulled that off. It was like there were not words. I couldn't sleep for like 2 days, and I started having this fear that like, oh my god, if I fall asleep, I might wake up and realize this was actually all a dream, and I haven't qualified the boat for the
Oh my
Olympics
God.
yet, and we have to do it all again. Like I had this like weird terror that it was all a dream because like coming from the second varsity, from the junior varsity, from like masters rowing, you dream about the Olympics, but you don't. I think that was the first moment where I realized like it was happening.
I think everyone feels that way a little bit. It was even, I remember in 2021 when I made the team and my mom was like, well, other people go to the Olympics, like real people don't go to the Olympics. And I was like, no, mom, real people apparently do go to the Olympics. Like
I
it
felt that
turns
way
out.
too. It turns out like real people,
Yeah.
right? No, I absolutely understand that thought of like, oh no, like Olympians go to the Olympics, not real people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then of course I think about, I really looked up to Megan and Ellen. I remember just like oohing and awing over them because they were Olympians. And then very quickly I was like, 2022 rolls around, and I was like, well, yeah, all my friends are Olympians. Like, whatever. It's not that big a deal. There's like A side Olympians and B side Olympians. Which is so different from like somebody's on the national team. I like want to kiss the ground they walk on. It's all perspective.
It is all perspective. Yeah. So now, not to like fast forward through everything, but
Fast forward through the other 3 years.
through the other 3 years, like you're heading to your second Olympics, like what do you think have been some major changes that you've individually made between, preparing for Tokyo versus preparing now, like for you personally?
In the preparation for Tokyo, everything felt like life or death. And in a lot of ways, it sort of was at the time. Right now, I have worked a lot more closely with Liz Fusco, our team nutrition dietitian, and so I have a much better understanding of nutrition and recovery, fuel, and how much we need carbohydrates and when to have them. And so I feel like my ability to recover and to train hard based on how I fuel is much better this time around. Also, we the training program that Casey wrote for us was very very effective, but it also was a reasonably high volume, very high intensity program. Whereas on Yoshi's training program, it's much higher volume, but with less intensity built in. So like the training itself looks different, and then also I think a lot of my emotions around training have changed, and I'm more at peace with training, and we do more lactate testing, so I can be more diligent about like my heart rate zones and my splits. And I definitely, absolutely, positively, in the lead up to Tokyo, was like, I always need to be at the top of zone, and I'm cheating if I'm not at the top of zone, and I'm lazy if I'm not at the top of zone. And now I have a much better understanding of like, no, that's not true. That's how you get injured. Be at the top of zone sometimes, be in the middle of zone sometimes, and it's okay to be at the bottom end of zone if you're like feeling gross. And so I think that like having that grace around when do you need to push and when do you need to let off has also really changed for the better for me.
Not to ask like a emotional question, but what does it mean to you to be racing in the last lightweight double event at the Olympics? Like, do you guys think about that, or is it just kind of business as usual?
What I think about it is really like this grand opportunity to be the forever Olympic champion. And there are so many things that need to happen, and that is like a huge, scary, nearly impossible dream. And like, there are so many fast boats, there's so much between here and there But if we can make all those steps and if we can get there, it is like really, really cool. But Kristi, I have a question for you.
Yeah, do you have any questions for me?
I do. My biggest question is like, you have been doing this for a while. You've done the camp system, you've done the Orion club system, and now you're here in our weird hybrid Yosi system. Do you have a favorite? And like, what do you think about how the system is changing?
I think it's a hard question because I think there's pluses and minuses to both. Like, we've both been in fast boats that were more independent. And I think when you're training kind of independently in a community, like with personalized coaches, and that can be really special and like a really cool experience. And I think you can gain a lot of speed that way. I do think like there's also fallbacks to that, specifically maybe like training with other boats, which now we get to do a lot of that in this new system. But sometimes in this new system, I do sort of occasionally feel like I'm just one of many, many people and I'm not really a priority versus like being a high performance athlete or in an individual like in Boston or something like that. I think a lot of times there was a little bit more like attention. But like I said, I think there's pluses and minuses. And I also think it's been a good lesson for me in like learning to advocate for myself and saying, I think I need a change, or I think I need this, like to be the best version of myself. And maybe sometimes the answer is like, you're being a little bit of a diva, but sometimes it's not. So I do really like getting to train with so many of the other national team athletes. I find it very inspirational, and like I have really enjoyed getting to know so many people on the team. To me, buy-in is just necessary no matter what you're doing. So like when I'm all in on Orion, I'm 100% believe that that is what I should be doing and that the plan is tailored to me. And like when I was rowing in Boston with Greg, like I 100% believed that we were doing the things that were going to prepare us, you know, whatever. And now I believe Yosi is doing the things that are going to prepare us to be the best version of ourselves on the day, you know? And so I think for me, like blind faith maybe is a weird term, but I feel like I sort of just need that. Otherwise, like I drive myself crazy.
I think that's a very good point, and I agree with you that like I think the times when I have done the best in rowing is when I bought in, and the times when I have not been up to par are when I was questioning what was going on.
Cool. Well, Molly, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you for listening to me rattle on about random stuff like dart throwing and finance.
No, I loved it. I loved it. Cool. Thanks for listening, and thank you so much to Molly for coming on and sharing so much. I hope everyone feels inspired and motivated by Molly to go out and chase your own dreams. To end the show this week, I am sharing a quote from the book Once a Runner, which I loved. I've talked about on the podcast before, and everyone should go read it. But the quote goes like this: "He felt a strange brand of nostalgia now that it was so close. A nostalgia for this moment, this next hour. The present was so poignant that he had begun to reminisce already." Thanks for listening. Have a great week. See you next time. Bye. I'd love to hear from you, so send us a topic suggestion, or if you'd like to submit a question for our Ask Kristi Anything segment, head to our website, theother3years.com.